only 8 of us, or is it still early? It's 5:30. I don't know. Tonight must be an extra point night.
Yeah.
Look at Brad's face.
Yeah.
All right, who's presenting tonight? Yep. Okay, I thought we had a few people presenting. Okay, before we have you present, we have a special treat. This is Miss Lexi. She has been working very diligently on her senior project, and I am very happy and honored to say that I was a mentor with her this semester on this project. And this is the culmination of all of her hard work. I certainly won't say our hard work because she did all the work and I said, very good. So my part was very easy. But she has put so much time and effort into her research as well as her PowerPoint presentation. And so she is going to present her work to us tonight. All right? Are you ready? Take it away. Go right ahead.
Okay, as she said, my name is Lexi. I'm 17. I'm a senior at Louisiana New Tech at Plain Dillon, which is just fancy for saying I go to Plain Dillon High School. And I did my senior project on homicide, which is very unique to the subjects that my other classmates chose, mainly because I want a career in pathology and medical examination. Mainly this was inspired by my interest in the medical field, but I really enjoyed crime, and Pat McConnell, I don't know if he helps Dr. Jude, but he was my uncle, and he was a homicide detective for Shreveport for a while, and he was my other mentor, and he inspired a lot of my work and my choice to research homicide. So the main topics I want to go over are just the different effects in homicide, like 5 stages of grief, and Ms. Nikki, she encouraged me a lot because the first time I met her, I'd already done a lot of my research, and I used the book by Kubler-Ross, and she said she teaches that to y'all in y'all's class, so she was able to pinpoint every quote or paraphrase I had from examples of that book that I used in my research. And I don't have a lot in my PowerPoint, but in my 10-page essay I had to write for this, I used a lot of examples from her book. Then I go into decrease in health because I learned that in homicide and just losing a loved one in general, your health as a survivor is very much affected. And then because of that health, mental and physical, it leads into possible thoughts of suicide or any physical pain you can cause on yourself. The 5 different stages of grief I researched were denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. They can go in different orders depending on how that loss affects you, but I picked the general order that happens for most people, and then I have them all with examples on other slides. So first is denial, which for me I experienced greatly when I lost my grandmother. I didn't lose her to homicide, but through this research I realized losing any loved one is just as hard. And I didn't want to believe that she was gone, just like the people that experience loss to homicide. But then moving into anger, it's harder for them because the fact that they're able to pinpoint their anger at an exact person that they can say, this person killed my loved one, makes it harder for them to move on. And this anger showed not just towards that person, but you can have anger towards yourself for not necessarily being there for them, or for that loved one, because you can feel like, well, maybe they shouldn't have been there, or maybe they could have done things to prevent their own murder. Next is bargaining, and this had a lot for me in all my research to do with spiritual things, because people will pray not necessarily to God, but any deity or authority they see, to try to bring that life of that loved one back to them, because they just can't accept the fact that they're gone now. And because they can't accept this loss, they moved into the depression stage, which is the realization that this is happening and they can't get that person back, and it's hardest to move on. And then I'll talk further into depression whenever I go into decreasing health and suicide. The last stage is for acceptance, and this is a quote I found, but it was very important to me because there's a lot of things, because of the losses I've received in my life, that I hadn't accepted necessarily. So if the past cannot be changed, forgotten, edited, or erased, it can only be accepted. So you don't have to agree with it, but everything that's happened in the past has to be accepted. And in acceptance, it's just moving to a point, it's still harder to do everyday tasks and go throughout your life, but you understand that things could have been worse, or you just have to make the best of it because it's happened and you can't change it. Mental and physical health, I'm going to skip to the second part because one disorder that I did research on that is highly developed after losing life of a loved one is post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, and those are disorders that cause you, well, they're psychological disorders, and you can go to therapy for them. They have medication for things because it puts you farther and farther into depression. But there are several things that can influence your health physically and mentally, and in my key facts, I have a couple of those influences. In suicide, I know it's my last point, but at the very end, it's never the answer. And I know I did a little more research on the side, and suicide is, the statistics, they're rising more and more, not just from this, but any depression caused. People who have lost loved ones to homicide, they're at more risk, and they experience more traumatic situations after that because they just can't get over certain situations. And then because of this depression that they're already in, the murder can invite to suicide and then homicide again because of, like I stated, saying that that person killed my loved one. So then they want revenge for that loss. And then alcohol or substance abuse because they can't get over it and they have to have another way to cope. And then I gave them the source. And another quote I have, I'm going to read it for you. It was from a website I found on helping people cope, and it's, following a homicidal death, family members are at risk for developing sustained and dysfunctional psychological reactions. And then I talk about other reactions that you have to be watched for, and death notification done by a police officer. So several different aspects of homicide all tie into each other just based on reactions. Next I have therapy, and I researched the two different kinds and then compared them to each other. Because in psychology, there are different specialties, like I listed some. I have education, or educational, comparative, and forensic psychology, and there's over 40 different specialties, and it's mainly correcting behavioral problems, as I'm sure you've learned, and then psychiatry. Of course, they can prescribe medication, and it's mental training, but that has to do with more mental disorders, and both they refer to other doctors, so they refer to each other, and either way they do what's best for the patient they have. And then, of course, they both have to have a college degree, whether it's in psychiatry or psychology. Death notification, I researched this, and it was actually not that hard to find because there's so many different pamphlets written by police officers that have to do this daily. And I didn't want my project to just be on the families that lost these loved ones, but how it affected the police officers that had to give this news. And Pat McConnell told me it is very hard, and of course with the list I gave you have to be compassionate. It's better to let a tear fall and show emotion for that family than to seem cold and come off to them as very rude, because they're not going to take that very well. Before a police officer notifies the family that their loved one has been killed, you have to know the information 100%. And even though the body has to be identified by the family, they still have to know, really, it has to be rock solid information for them to go and tell that family, your loved one has been murdered. And then just a few procedures they follow is it's in person, because no one wants to hear news that their loved one was lost over the phone or in an email. It's harsh, and of course, the end time, they don't want to know their family member's been missing for a year if it was something that could have been figured out very easily if they were found in public. And then in pairs, I'll talk about reactions a little bit more, but in pairs isn't just for the benefit of having to help other people in that family if there's more than one, but police officers can be physically attacked because of the shock that a family goes into or anything like that. So it's for the protection of the officers and of the family. And then in plain language, you have to be able to explain it to a family to where they understand it and not to where they're going to have constant questions that could have just been brought to them really easily. So it has to be explained in words where they understand because, of course, they're getting life-changing news. And with passion, gone over that one, but still, it's really hard to hit on that because you have to have some emotion towards that family because even though it's not your family you're losing, it's still a life lost and it's really sad. And then I'll talk more on other reactions that happen. One thing that Ms. Nikki had me hit on was Greek terms from the Latin language that go back into Greek mythology, but really interesting and to me because that's one thing I'm interested in. But to learn the actual meanings of these characters or just the language, Thanatos is one, and it's a personification of nonviolent death, such as like dying of old age or natural pain-free causes. And then even though people don't just wake up one morning and they're like, oh, I want to die, it's still the fact that even at a very young age, we learn that life and death is inevitable. Either way, we're going to die. So even if that's for people spiritually, dying and being reborn, or dying physically and anything like that, it's still inevitable, and we learn that at a very young age. Next is Cur, and that is a violent death, and I hit on that because I specifically talked about homicide and murder and the ravaging disease. And this was very interesting to me because Thanatos is actually a male in the Greek mythology, and Cur, or Curas, they're women. So I found it really funny that women would be the goddesses of violent death. And then Senescence, I don't know how to pronounce it exactly. Senescence. And I gave an image with this one because it's very interesting because I know everyone grows older, but it was interesting to see it laid out like phrase by phrase to see it like that. And then this is my last slide, but have my key facts like talks about shock, how the people can physically attack someone because they just don't understand what's going on. And then police officers, coroners, medical examiners, anyone that is there to give the news. They can give numbers and websites that can help the families. One of the top giving numbers or websites is actually to a funeral home because they can help arrange things and it makes it a lot easier on the family. Another thing that I researched is conversations that used to be just an everyday occurrence are now really awkward to have because that person might have been involved with those conversations and it's not the same anymore. So their life has to get back to normal and kind of mellow out before you can have those kinds of conversations again. And then because that loved one was still lost and they know a person did it, you can look back and you can see that even though you were trying to help someone, they might have questioned your motives or seen you as a threat, even though you were just trying to help them, but it's because they were hurt, and it's really hard to get back on track with your life when you know a physical being actually took something from you. And last, one of the things I talked about with the 5 stages of grief on things that influence how you react is one of the major things is actually the sex of a person. Because in the household, maybe in most families, I can't say that for mine, but the male is normally put at the head of the household. So it's not formally seen as them to show a whole lot of emotion because it's not tough or masculine. So it's harder for them to show emotion in certain situations. So that determines how they react to the situation, and they might mourn by themselves, but it's a lot harder to do than a woman because we're able to show emotion more often throughout our life. That was the movie. I think y'all, I was actually really nervous, but I have a favor to ask if y'all feel behind. I'm going to pass around this sheet to show proof of, I have a video, but that y'all are here for my class. And if you don't want to put your name or your phone number, it's fine. I don't think my teacher will, but just in case she does want to contact and ask anyone if they learned anything from my project, she'll have y'all's information.
Great job, Lexi. Great job.